guys, my name is Rizka Amalia as the first speaker. So the first is abstract. The purpose of this study was to investigate junior high school student perception of the characteristic of the effective English teachers. The focuses include 1. Junior high school students' general perception about English teachers' characteristic, 2. Whether gender has an effect of the perceptions, and 3. Whether students with different academic achievement perceived differently in terms of characteristic for effective English teacher. This study was conducted via a questionnaire with 198 junior high school students in Tainan area. The data came from student responses to a 50-item questionnaire classifying into instructional competence, personality, and teacher-student relationship, and were analyzed with descriptive statistics, independent tests, and one-way ANOVA. The findings of study indicated that students generally perceive teachers' personality and teacher-student relationship as more important characteristics than those of instructional competence. Being enthusiastic in teaching, friendly, open-minded, respecting students, and caring about students were the most important characteristics of effective English teachers. Although mastering English was considered as an important characteristic, conducting lessons in English was not in favor. Moreover, female students considered the characteristics of personality and teacher-student relationship significantly more important than male students. Female students also rated significantly higher on characteristics such as motivating students to learn English and being familiar with the English culture, whereas male students perceives respecting students and being ethical more important for effective English teacher. A significant variation was also found on the teacher-student relationship among students with high, middle, and low academic achievement. Students with a high academic achievement considered characteristic of teacher-student relationship more important than students with low academic achievement. The Ministry of Education in Taiwan described that decades ago, being an effective teacher was confined in expertise in knowledge, but at present time, an effective or good teacher is expected to hold many personal traits. Foreign language teacher were suggested to be different to teacher of other subjects. Board reported that foreign language teachers are distinctive in the nature of the subject, in the teaching content and methodology, and the interaction between teacher and student, and is about being native or non-native. The next is research question. There are three research questions to be addressed in this study are as follows. One is, what are junior high school student general perception of characteristic of effective English teachers? Two, what are the differences between male and female junior high school student perception in terms of characteristic of effective English teacher? And the last is, what are the differences between the perception of low, middle, and high achievers in junior high school in terms of characteristics of effective English teacher? Next is literature review. Characteristic of effective teachers' learning is not only a cognitive work but also an affective work. Follett indicated that individual differences in academic performance cannot be explained as solely the result of differences in general ability, but appears as the product of complex and dynamic interaction between cognitive, affective, and motivational variables. First is instructional competence. In 2000, Pozo Munoz, Rebolso Pacheco, and Fernandez Ramirez used the semantic differential scale with 30 adjectives to investigate university students' perception of an ideal teacher. The next is personality. Broadhead proposed a blueprint for effective teachers and state that personality is the essential characteristic for an effective teacher. Jen interviewed 6 grad students to find out student perception of effective teacher. The fourth is teacher-student relationship. Teacher's personality is highly associated with establishing teacher-student relationship. Davis emphasized on the relationship between students and teachers and claimed that this kind of social motivation can promote students' learning and achievement. And the last characteristic of effective language teacher on different subjects may need different characteristics specifically to the nature of the subject. The results of Bell's survey study indicate that those teachers who are recognized as effective teachers often adopt communicative theories of foreign language teaching, assign small group work for negotiation of meaning, and instruct selected strategies for foreign language learning. And the next is method. The first is research design. The current study primarily involved a survey questionnaire concerning students' demographics information and their perception of English teacher characteristics. Because one purpose of this study was to identify and compare per- the, pers- the perception from students with different academic achievements, student grade report of English was used to classify students as high, middle, or low achievers. Participants. The participants of this study were 198 students, 100 males and 98 females at a prestigious junior high school in the suburban area in Taiwan. There are were 15 formal English teachers in the school. Among the 50 classes, 6 classes, 2 classes from each grade level were randomly selected for this study. Instrument. The data of this study came from 2 major sources. A. The language teacher characteristic questionnaire, and B. Students' grade report of their English midterm exam in fall 2007. Language Teacher Characteristic Questionnaire. The questionnaire of this study was adapted from Huang Teacher Characteristic Questionnaire and Browse Language Teacher Characteristic Questionnaire. In addition to the demographic information items, there are 50 items organized into 3 major categories emerged from the literature. First, instructional contents, 21 items. Second, personality, 14 items. And third, teacher-student relationship, 15 items. Participants were asked to report their perception about the characteristics of effective teacher on a 4-point Likert scale by indicating the extent of importance of each teacher characteristic statement using 1 as not important at all, 2 as not important, 3 as important, and 4 as very important. Items that achieved score higher than 3 would represent that the characteristics were important regarding being an effective teacher. Next, midterm grade report in English. Due to the limitation of time and difficulty in obtaining students' complete transcripts of the semester, student achievement level was identified according to their midterms grades in the English class. The midterm exam of the semester was accounted from a large percentage of student academic achievement, thus making the midterm grade report as an acceptable measure for distinguished student academic achievement. However, this constraint may obstruct the interpretation and generalization of the result of this study. The complete data by the instrument was analyzed with SPSS 12.0 software to answer the 3 proposed research questions. Research question 1 investigate the student overall perception of the characteristic of effective English teachers. A descriptive analysis was conducted to report the mean scores, standard deviation, and the percentage of importance. Students' preference was determined by the ranking of the mean score of the 50 teachers' characteristic. To answer the second research question, an independent test was conducted to determine the gender difference. Research question truly examined the effects of academic achievement on students' perception of characteristics of effective English teachers. Due to the different placement of the classes, the first and second grade students were identified as high, top 33%, middle and low bottom 33% achievers according to their grade report in English.
Next is the result. The first research question investigated students' general perception in terms of what were considered important to be an effective English teacher. As shown in Table 1, all three categories, instructional competence, personality, and teacher-student relationship, received a main score higher than 3, indicating that these aspects were all important to be an effective English teacher. However, personality and teacher-student relationship received slightly higher scores than instructional competence. When each category was further examined in detail in the instructional competence section, the only item considered as important by 90% of students was gives just enough homework. However, in the personality category, the characteristics are being friendly, being open-minded, being humorous, being ethical, being emotional stable, being attentive to his or her appearance, and dressing simply and modestly. In the teacher-student relationship category, the item includes respecting students, caring about students, listening to and understanding student needs, asking questions and encouraging students to ask questions, being sensitive to student problems, praising students often, participating in student activities, showing expectation on students, and questioning students in time. The second research question attempts to examine the gender difference on students' perception of English teacher characteristics. As shown in Table 2, the analysis by the independent or test on three categories between male and female students yielded two significant differences that female students perceive a teacher's personality and the relationship between the teacher and students more important for effective teaching than male students. When examined in detail, 4 items were found to reach the level of significance, including giving just enough homework, providing practice and feedbacks, motivating students to study English, and being familiar with the English culture. Similar differences were found in the ranking of the most important characteristics of effective teachers. For male students, the top 3 important characteristics were being enthusiastic in teaching, respecting students, and teaching interestingly and actively. Whereas for female students, they were being open-minded, being friendly, being enthusiastic in teaching. And for the male student, the 3 lowest rating characteristics were giving tests often, emphasizing on academic achievement, and often conducting the lesson in English. The lowest 2 were the same for female students, but the female students also dislike teachers English who gives easy tests.
Perception among different academic achievers. Because different methods were taken for the class assignment of the first 2 grades and the third grades in the school, the analysis of the third research question: what are the differences between the perception of low, middle, and high achievers in junior high school in terms of characteristic of effective English teachers was conducted separately. First and second grades. Generally speaking, for the first and second grades, high achievers rate significantly higher than middle achievers and low achievers in all 3 categories: instructional competence, personality, and teacher-student relationship. As shown in Table 3, one-way ANOVA analysis on the 3 categories of teacher characteristics among high, middle, and low achievers yielded only one significant variation at the 0.05 level of significant teacher-student relationship, F2.117, 3.59, P equal 0.03, low than 0.05. No significant variation was found in either the instructional competence category of the personal category. Post-house analysis using the safest method found this significant difference between high achievers and low achievers. Mean difference equal 0.28, P equal 0.3, lower than 0.5 in the teacher-student relationship category. Shown in the table 4, the result from the top and bottom of the ranking of instructional competence characteristic between students of the three achievement levels also related interesting finding. High achievers embraces teachers' characteristic that are associated with learning strategies such as applying daily experience and providing practical examples. Middle achievers are much on appropriate amount of homework with practice and feedbacks, and low achievers prefer characteristics that motivate learning, such as providing interesting and active interaction. Table 5 listed the result from the top and bottom of the ranking of personality characteristics between three academic level students. Characteristics such as being emotionally stable, and enthusiastic in teaching, and open-minded were considered important for all three levels of achiever. Yet, high and middle achievers consider being energetic and athletic the less important as characteristic of effective teachers, whereas low achievers consider this characteristic the most important. The third grade students were in ability grouping classes. As a result, high achievers in the A-level classes were expected to concentrate more on preparing the senior high school examination and were under more academic pressure than two low achievers in the B-level classes. This phenomenon may have included student preparation of effective teachers' characteristics. As presented in Table 6, independent thesis on the three categories between the high achievers and low achievers found a significant difference on all three of them. Instructional competence are equal 4.03, P lower than 0.01. Personality equal 2.95, P lower than 0.01, and teacher-student relationship 1 equal 2.99, P equal 0.01, lower than 0.05. Low achievers seems to generally rate an importance of each teacher's characteristic lower than high achievers, and nevertheless, among the three categories, personality and teacher-student relationships still receive in higher rating than instructional competence characteristic from the low achievers.
Next is discussions. The purpose of this study was to investigate junior high school students' perceptions of the characteristic of effective English teacher. Three major focuses of this study included student general perceptions, the gender difference on students' perceptions, and whether students with different academic achievement perceived differently. Okay, next is general perceptions. Students emphasize teacher instructional competence to a certain level, but the result of this study indicates slightly higher importance on personality and teacher-student relationship. This result is consistent to several previous studies. The top 5 characteristics of effective English teacher from student response are similar to Huang's finding. In both Huang's and this study, students revealed their expectations toward being respected and cared by their English teacher, and they mostly emphasized that an effective English teacher should be enthusiastic in teaching. Moreover, the result of this study indicates the respecting a student is important for effective English teachers. which is consistent with Dudley Marling suggestions that mutual respect is indispensable to be good teacher. Similar perspective were point out by Vogue, who indicated the language teacher are required to have particular traits such as having sense of humor, being creative, flexible, actor type, motivating, enthusiastic, being able to communicate freely, and radiating positive feeling. Paul also suggested that the relationship between the language teacher and students is important because there is more communication between teacher and students in language teaching. Next is general difference. The results of this study indicated the male and female students considered the importance of effective teacher characteristics differently in terms of personality and teacher-student relationship. In this study, female students perceived English teacher personality and teacher-student relationship as more important characteristics than male student did. A possible explanation may be that in classroom interactions, female students are generally more sensitive to or easier to be influenced by their teachers' personalities and emotions, and in turn expect their teacher to be friendly, emotionally stable, humorous, considerate, open-minded, and so on. These personality characteristics are often be considered as the basic characteristics that help develop good interpersonal relationship. Unlike female students, male students showed much care and concern about their dignity and face-saving, and believe that effective teachers should be respect their students. Different among achievers of 3 levels. In instructional competence category, while high achievers consider maintaining disciplines in class important, middle achievers seem to be more passive in learning and expect English teacher to provide more practices and feedbacks. As for a low achiever, they prefer teachers who provide interesting and active instruction and give little homework. However, an interesting finding is that compared with the result of Huang's study, in which both high and low achievers provide teachers who describe comprehensively and are knowledgeable, but these attributes were not considered important in this study. According to Newman, teaching a different subject might need different attributes. The relationship between teachers and students was considered more important for high achievers than low achievers. The possible explanation may be that high achievers view English teacher as a person who has abundant knowledge and they prefer to establish close relationship with them so as they motivate their learning. This finding may be correspond with Harden and Crosby's idea that good teacher should be a study guide producer, as well as with Lee's suggesting that good teacher-student relationship is a key element in the students' motivation and classroom management. And last is conclusion and future research. Despite other language-focused characteristics, being enthusiastic in teaching is most important characteristic for effective English teacher. Cardigan proposed 6 levels that included missions, identity, belief, competencies, behavior, and environment to be active teachers. The awareness of mission to be an effective English teacher is a first step. As an old proverb that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. Thank you.